co-person.
Okay, here we go.
All right, Kathy, go. Oh, it's me. All right, so hey, Kathy, can you let people in?
Kate, can Kate do that?
I can. I'm doing.
Okay.
Great. Hold on. Just a moment, please, as Kathy says.
One moment, please.
This is a big moment for you guys. Welcome to those who have never been here because we have our own theme song.
Well, it's the end of the week. Now where you been? Well, now it's Feedback Friday, so come on in. Come sit down and stare at your screen. We got a presenter that you never seen. We're Feedback Friday, we're on the loose. We'll be the train, you be the caboose. It's Feedback Friday with Kathy and Amy. Mashed potatoes and the gravy. It's Feedback Friday all day long. Feedback, feedback, Feedback Friday. Well, it's the end of the week.
I did it again.
Where you been? Well, now it's Feedback Friday, so
Gosh.
Okay, there we go.
I did it again.
It's Friday the 13th.
That's why.
Hello.
But I did it last week too, so I have no excuse.
Okay, so when we get to chat, that'll be later. I need two things. I need like a tinted lip gloss for the winter,
Okay,
not Burt's Bees,
gotcha.
and something for my skin as well. I'm using
Oh,
Plant Workshops.
Plant Workshop salve or hemp oil is,
Her
yeah.
person doesn't have hemp oil anymore. She has a beautiful lavender oil, but I think I need a little bit more. But anyway.
Kathy, do you think people think that we're like a body care show now?
We are a body care show. We're talking about caring for your body, your soul,
your mind,
and your creative impulses.
Right.
So welcome to Feedback Friday. As you all know, I'm Kathy Hattori. I'm the president and owner of Botanical Colors. And today we have a show that's going to be focusing on our favorite color, indigo. But before we get to that, let's see, what else am I supposed to tell you? Oh yeah, with me helping out is my co-pilot, Kate Rosendale. Hello, Kate.
Hi.
Side by side here in the studio, and then we realized that we were both gonna have to wear masks and that it was just gonna be really tough. So I'm here in the studio, Kate's in her safe home. Hope you are all as well staying safe. It's getting kind of crazy out there with the virus. So mask up if it's not mandated in your state, it should be, but do mask up. It does help. We get more questions about indigo than any other dye. So what we decided to do is update our online information because the recipe that we have is probably from 2012 in a workshop that I taught in Taos, New Mexico, which was like, that's a really super magical place if you ever get a chance to go down there. It's really cool. And at that time it was relatively new and we were kind of just struggling through exactly how to make it work because most of us had either come from a fermentation vat experience or using fairly aggressive chemistry in order to create indigo vats. Even if it was with natural indigo, we were, pouring all the other stuff in there. So this was a new idea. And over the past few years, we've actually kind of made adjustments to the recipe, but really didn't do much updating. And so Kate and I decided that it was high time that we did a couple of things. One was to look at the indigo, how it's being used in terms of each vat, and then also do a comparison. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And before we get started, just a few housekeeping things. One is, of course, thank you, everyone. Thank you. It's Friday the 13th. Thank you. The election is over and decided. Thank you. I guess Georgia's next, please. And so, yeah, it's been a super, I think, anxiety ridden time, and at least a few things are now sort of settling out. So it's a good time to relax into blue and learn a little bit. Amy is going to be monitoring the call. Everyone's on mute until we get to chat. No, until we get to the end of the session, and then we open it up to say howdy hi to everyone. And we're recording this call, so you will be able to reference it in the future. And so we're anxious to get started. And what else? Oh, any questions that you have that you need references and or additional information, we put that in the chat. We forward the chat and the video link to you so that you have all the information that is being discussed in this session. Okay, so I'm just going to say to our guest, Kathy Hattori, is that it? And she's going to talk about Indigo. Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Botanical Colors, for having me on.
Oh my God, we're gonna lose people on this one.
We're gonna lose you guys. I am just so like, I'm beyond wrecked. Okay, I'm trying to be happy, but it is just it's been a roller coaster. But the great thing that we did, I actually have a slideshow, but I'll just tell you what we did and then I'll show you the slides. I think there's 8 of them. And then we'll go through the samples because I have a second camera set up that shows each of the different things we did and some of the discoveries we made. So just some background information. We've been making 123 Vats a long time. And quite frankly, I was always making the fructose vats and they were good. And then I made a henna vat a few years ago and I liked it better, but I could not tell you why. And then we've tried iron vats a couple of times and we really liked them, but then they were really, we were not really able to control them very well. So then they kind of fell out of favor. Plus, I personally do not like iron. So it was tough to get into an iron vat, but I have to tell you, if you are like a dark indigo junkie, iron's it's definitely not even the gateway to dark colors. It is the dark color. So you can get over your iron distaste and use it, but it is only for cellulose and bast fibers. It is not for silk. It is not for wool. Definitely not for cashmere. So that's just kind of a quick overview. I'm going to share my screen, God willing. Yeah. Click to exit full screen. Oh yeah. Let's see if I hit present. It's going to start at the beginning. No, not starting at the beginning. All right. I'm going to stop the share, guys. I've already done a fail here.
Kathy, I think we practiced enough for this that you should have gotten this right. I'm really disappointed.
Yeah, I know. Just load it on, Amy.
Come on, there's only a couple people looking. Just play it cool.
Yeah, only 230 of them. Okay, I'm going to start from there. Oop. I think I'm in the, nope. Yes, that's the start. Okay, so we're talking about the 123 vat. I'm not talking about a fermentation vat. I'm not talking about instant indigo, scumo, woad balls, whatever else your creative minds have thought about. I'm talking about the 123 vat. And so what I really love about this vat is that you can actually get different colors using different reducing agents. And so when I'm talking about the reducing agent, what I'm talking about is either fructose, henna, or iron. There are other reducing agents out there. You can boil up pear peels and make a fructose liquid and use that as a reducing agent. I'm convinced that leftover cranberries, because they're high, anything that's high in antioxidants is probably a pretty good reducing agent. So Osage balls, leftover cranberry, cranberries from picking cranberries, things like that could be really interesting, but you'll need to do the experiments. What is it that I'm hitting? Oh yeah, here. You're right, I didn't practice. Okay, so, oops. This is a fructose fat. And so what we did was we made 4 different fats, and we made them with exactly the same amount of indigo, and we only changed the reducing agent. So we had a fructose vat, we had a vat that we call Shake-a-lotta, because instead of dissolving each ingredient separately and putting it into the vat, you actually take all the powders and mix them so that it looks like kind of a gray blue powder, and then you add that into your vat. And that is the technique that Kristen Arts from Scrambles Quilts introduced to me last year, I think it was, and it's quite simple. So it's really great if you're kind of in a hurry and just want to not have to have 3 containers, 3 things of hot water, and just go. But there is a difference, a slight difference. So hopefully you'll be able to see that with our second camera when we go to the details. What these represent are, we have something that we call a fresh vat. And what we mean by that is that we actually made the vat, let it cool till it was cool enough for us to put our hands in it and use it. And then we dipped. And so the first representation on your left is a 3 1-minute dips in a fresh vat. And then we went to 5 1-minute dips in a fresh vat. And then we paused. We paused for 3 days, and then we did it again. And as you can see, the difference between fresh and aged 3 by 1-minute dips is significant. In person, it's even more apparent. And the 5-minute dip was, you were actually getting 5 times 1-minute dip with an aged vat. You were getting into kind of medium dark indigo territory. And if you had done it immediately after your vat was cool enough to work with, you would be getting a much lighter shade. So we thought that this was pretty, we kind of just, I've sort of known about it intuitively, but we've never done any experiments. So this was interesting to me. We did the same thing with the Shake-a-lotta, fresh vat, 3 1-minute dips, 5 1-minute dips. And then again, we aged it for 3 days and we tried it again. As you can see, I think this is a much more dramatic spread between aged and fresh, right? If you look at that, you can see that the fresh are these nice lighter mid-tone blues. But once you get into an aged vat, you're actually able to achieve a darker shade. The other thing, just looking at the fabrics below me, there, so I have them here, is that it appears that the aged vats also penetrate the fabric better, meaning that the coverage seems to be more even than it was with the fresh vats. So that's something to think about. If you are an indigo artist and you're trying to figure out like how do you maximize the indigo in your vat, it really appears as if you can age your vats a couple of days or 3 days, that you will get a stronger color from the same amount of dipping. The henna vat, again, henna is kind of an orangish brown color base. And so when you look at like henna tattoos that people wear, it's that kind of beautiful terracotta rust color. It does impart a slight shade to the indigo. So if you look at these in person, you'll see that the indigo is just ever so slightly, I don't know, really, it's a little bit browner, but also slightly flatter, if you will. It doesn't quite have that luminous blue, but it's still a really beautiful color. And again, the fresh vats, 3 and 5 minutes, are much lighter than the aged vats. And again, all of these vats were aged for 3 days before we redipped. And then finally, iron. I'm going to show all of the samples side by side, 3-minute fructose, Shake-a-lotta, henna, and iron, so you can really see the difference. But iron, again, what I noticed is that on the 3-minute fresh and the 5-minute fresh, the coverage is slightly uneven. And again, it's like it didn't quite penetrate. But once the vat was aged for 3 days and we did the dips again, not only were they darker, but they were also more even. So here's a side-by-side of all the variables at 3 minutes fresh, right? So look at that, fructose, Shake-a-lotta, henna, and iron. It's a pretty dramatic between iron 3 minutes and fructose 3 minutes. The same with a 5 minute, right? Slightly darker shade, but again, the difference between iron at 5 minutes versus henna or Shake-a-lotta or fructose is significant. These are the aged vats, 3 minute dips. Again, just a richer shade for the same amount of dipping. And when we say 3 by 1 minute dips, what I'm talking about is you put the fabric into the vat for a minute, then you remove it, you oxidize it, which means that you let it change color. So it's blue, and then you go back in. I don't rinse between dips. I just go back in and I do that 3 times. So it's 3 times 1 minute dips. And then after that, we fully oxidize and then rinse it. And then the 5 minute in an aged vat. Again, the difference between fructose and iron, or even henna and fructose, is pretty dramatic. The other thing that I wanted to show you was that the amount of sediment in the vats really varies. So the henna, the Shake-a-lotta, and the fructose vats all had about the same amount of sediment, which wasn't a ton. I mean, maybe a ½ an inch to 1 inch on the bottom, but the iron really kind of piled it on. And I don't know, I think part of it is the iron 1, 2, 3 recipe is slightly different in that you use 3 parts calcium hydroxide instead of 2 parts. So you are putting more calcium hydroxide in the vat, but it also seemed like it just kind of grew. It was really expanded in the bottom. I'm looking at the iron vat now. It's still got a good 2 inches of sediment in the bottom. So maybe it dissipated a small amount after aging for a couple of months now, but it's still more sedimented than the others. So if you are using an iron vat, you're probably going to want to have the tallest, narrowest container that you can, because you will build up more sediment there. Okay, so that's just kind of hold on, let me stop share. That is my talk about what we found out. And then Kate, if you could just switch to the second camera. Okay, good. So I have these laid out side by side. This is, oh, it's weird, it's backward. No, it's correct. Fructose, Shake-a-lotta, henna, and iron. And if I just take the iron and I put it in between these two, you can kind of see this is the same amount of dips, just a different vat, right? 3 times 1 minute fresh, 5 times 1 minute fresh, 3 times 1 minute aged, 5 times 1 minute aged. So there, I should probably move this because it's really reflecting. It's really, really evident. So yeah, if you are working in cotton and you are really wanting to get super dark colors, I would look at an iron vat as the way to get there. If you are trying to get beautiful gradations and really control your indigo, you would do really well with either of the fructose type vats. And then henna is just, I don't know if you can see that it's, let's see, I'm trying to figure out where. It's much warmer. Can you see that it's got a slight undertone? Like this is much cooler. It's darker, of course, but it's just like this has kind of a warmer shade to it due to the henna in it. What else can I tell you about our experiment? Oh, a couple of things that people ask about a lot are like, how do you keep the vat heated? And so I'm going to show you that. I'm trying to figure out where. This is a bucket heater, and I bought this online. It sits in a 5-gallon bucket, there's this protective shield around the element. So even if it stands up in the bucket, the element isn't touching the plastic, so it won't melt it. And then we suspend these in larger vats. So we'll put like 2 bungee cords across the top of our vat and make sure it's pretty snug. And then there's a very slight kind of like lip here. So you could just suspend it and heat up your vat. And heating these types of 1, 2, 3 vats seems to be super helpful. I've heard that iron vats don't need to be heated, and I was going to try and do a cold iron vat experiment, but I didn't quite get to it. So it'd be something to just kind of test yourself, is do you get the same color from a unheated iron vat than you do from a heated iron vat? And when we're talking about heating, we're talking about going to maybe 90 degrees Fahrenheit, which is I think about 32 degrees Celsius. So it's not super hot, but just warm enough so that the reaction is continuing in your vat. And I think that's it for my presentation. Amy, it's about 9:26. Anything else you want to know about?
Yeah, people want to know so many things already about Indigo. But we also have a chat we're going to open up.
Okay, so yeah, I thought we could spend quite a bit of time just talking about details.
Okay. Let's open this up. So the chat's open, and I'm going to start with the questions that were sent in first. Okay.
Yep.
Are you ready? Dear Kathy.
Yes.
I have 2 vexing issues with my indigo dyed fabrics. Fading on edges when stored on shelves, and 2, crocking of threads and yarns. It doesn't seem to matter how much I soak, rinse, and finish, and which method I use. These things continue to be annoyances. Can you give this person some information on why that might be happening? Fading on edges, crocking of threads.
The edge fading, so I don't see that often, but I do get a lot of people asking me about it. So it must be pretty common. It kind of seems like with the 1, 2, 3 vats, the amount of that the calcium hydroxide kind of plays a role, and that if it isn't thoroughly cleaned off, that it continues to kind of influence the textile. This is pure conjecture. I don't really know, but what I have noticed is that the people that I know really, really clean their textiles well and really wash them. I don't see that kind of fading, no matter how light or how dark. And in fact, I have some, not sure I'm going to be able to pull them out, but I have some very, very light Abu Bakr textiles that are from something that he calls the blue of nothingness. So it's a very, very weak, very, very old vat. And these pieces are probably 3 to 4 years old, and there's no fading on them. I mean, you can see where it's a lighter shade of indigo, so there's a slight variation on the actual surface of the cloth, but there's no fold line fading, and there's no crocking. And we have pieces that are dark all the way to, the darkest of the iron indigos that I showed you just a few minutes ago, to something that's just a whisper of a blue. So I think cleaning and getting off that calcium is really important. And what I think people should also realize is that calcium hydroxide, it's like that stuff that's on the inside of your shower or on your, on your faucets. It's that buildup, right? And so I think that if you use a little bit of vinegar in your rinse water at the very end, you dissolve that off. And in fact, I have this kind of pathetic story where I had made my 1, 2, 3 vat in a stainless steel pot. And when I discarded it, there was this just crust of calcium hydroxide on the inside rim. I could not get it off for the life of me scrubbing. And I ended up throwing the pot away before I realized that if I just put a little bit of vinegar water in there, it would have dissolved it. So I think if you put a little bit of a mild acid, like vinegar, I always use vinegar just because other acids sometimes react with the natural dyes if you're doing an over dye. So I just try to stay with acetic acid. But when I do that, I notice that, first of all, I can get the lime off of the inside of a pot. So therefore it must be coming off of the textile as well. And so it's just a, a final rinse to just make sure you've dislodged all of that. And at that point, your textile should be fairly stable. In terms of threads, it's difficult with thread just because there's so much compression, pushing and pulling when you're stitching. So possibly the vinegar can assist and improve, but I don't know if it'll get rid of all of the crocking.
Okay. What is the best way to refresh a vat when it gets weak? Is it better to refresh or start over?
This is really a matter of your personal practice. Those of us who learned from Abu Bakr, his belief is that a vat has a lifespan. And so therefore, at the end of the lifespan, the vat is done and you discard it and you set a new vat. There are other people who have Carol Shaw Sutton at Cal State Long Beach. I mean, her vat was like a quarter of a century old. So she had been able to maintain a vat for many, many, many years and doing it by refreshing. So I don't know that there's a best way. I would say that there's a preference. I do know that with 1,2,3 vats, with the amount of calcium hydroxide that we use, and especially if you're making a 1,2,3 and a henna vat, that the amount of sediment on the bottom, if you keep refreshing it, is going to start growing. And at a certain point, you won't have enough room to do an effective dip. So you either, you can reset a new vat and compost what was in your old vat.
Okay, I am going to go over here to the chat, and our friend Sasha has a question. What happens if you leave your fructose vat for 2 months and temperatures drop to below 60? Will it still be okay if you reheat it? Asking for a friend, of course.
Friend asked.
Not Sasha.
Oh no. Yeah. So, you look at your vat and it's just like, uh-oh. But really what I do is I take my heater, or you can use a water bath in order to reheat your vat, and just warm it up a little. You want to get it to, 90 degrees Fahrenheit. So not super hot. And then I stir it vigorously, like, you stir it in a circular motion, and you should see a flower begin to just come up spontaneously. If you don't already have one will develop. And sometimes it's really pale and gray and just wimpy looking. Don't worry, it will come back. Sometimes it's just like, whoa, like they're yellow, the bubbles are terrible. But if you just do it a couple more times, you'll start to reactivate the vat, and you should start seeing that the bubbles, the flower, the ibana starts to get kind of richer looking, darker. It all depends on the strength of your vat to begin with. But yeah, just keep stirring it, and then it'll start to kind of come back. It may take more than just one stir and heat. So you might need to do it over a couple of days, and then your vat should start to rebalance, because all that stuff that's in the sediment below, that's kind of like, this sort of nourishing bed of indigo, fructose, calcium hydroxide, and it needs to be reincorporated into the liquid part of your vat and kind of dissipate and reactivate, and then it'll start to bloom. So it will come back. I mean, I would not freeze it. If it froze, you can try defrosting it and seeing if it'll still work, but try to keep it from freezing.
Teddy Milder is asking, why is sedimentation a problem? Do you feel like you answered that? I mean, you answered that a little bit. in that one.
Problem in that when you are dipping, you're trying to keep your goods from diving into that sediment layer, because if the sediment layer cakes on the actual fabric, when you pull out your goods and you have these big clumps and streaks of sediment, then those often will not oxidize correctly and you get these funny marks on your goods. And so if you like that kind of look, then you're great. But if you're trying to get a super even, dark or more of a controlled dip, then you want to avoid that. And that's why the sediment, you want to stay out of the sediment. Do you have a prowler?
Maybe. Not sure. Could be the form of a male person. He's just getting wacky, these Feedback Fridays. If you've got like 100 questions, so. All right, how much, Barbara says, how much iron are we talking about for a 5-gallon vat?
So this one had 50 grams of indigo, 100 grams of iron, and 150 grams of calcium hydroxide. So it's different. It's different than any other 1-2-3 vat, because other 1-2-3 vats have 1 part indigo, 2 parts of calcium hydroxide, and 3 parts of the reducing agent. So fructose or henna. But in iron is so fast, and so aggressive that you only need 2 parts of it.
Where do you get that heater that you were showing?
You can get them online and we can
Have
drop
a link to that? Okay. Indigo heater link.
It's called a bucket heater. If you live in a rural area, they're used for keeping the livestock water troughs from freezing over. There's these big ones that like go into the trough, but these are also used for buckets.
Can you overheat a vat?
I think you can, but so far we've sort of forgotten about a vat until it was about 150 degrees Fahrenheit, and then let it cool, stirred it, let it settle, and it was fine. So I would say if you're at a rolling boil, you might have a problem, but we've inadvertently overheated our vats and they still work.
Okay, Anna Volkman is asking, is there any difference between light and wash fastness between the vats?
We're not testing for that, Anna, so I don't know. What I do know is that indigo is the most light and wash fast of the dyes. I think a lot of times light fastness and wash fastness also is super dependent on how you prepare your fabric. So in the case of this fabric, we used off-the-shelf cotton hankies from Dharma Trading Company. We didn't even scour them. We just wet them out, let them soak probably for a couple of hours, and then wrung them out and started dipping. So yeah, if we had scoured them and done that kind of a thing, maybe we would have gotten a more even result, but we didn't.
Rihanna Gilbert is asking, should we stir our vats daily even if not dyeing with them that day?
You don't need to stir them daily if you're not going to be dyeing with them. Like, so in order to kind of put your vat to bed, let's just say for the winter, all we do is we will stir them, cover them, make sure that they're not going to freeze. And then when we're ready to revitalize the vat in the a few weeks later, a few months later, a year later, we stir, let it settle. Oh, I'm sorry. We heat, take out the heater, stir, let it settle, and then we run a quick test. And if it looks like the vat is still doing okay and is ready to go, then we start dipping. If it's looking kind of weak and we know there's a lot of indigo in there, then we'll do the stir, settle a number of times. I mean, it could take 4 or 5 times, and then your vat kind of starts to wake up and go, oh yeah, I'm here. And then you start getting nice color.
Okay, Miss Liz Aston. Hey, Liz, would love some troubleshooting tips for reviving a 1-2-3 fructose vat.
What's the trouble?
troubleshooting tips. Maybe, I don't know, Liz, if Liz wants to unmute herself. Maybe she's just not getting color on the fabric.
If it's really wimpy color and you know there's a lot of indigo, when I say a lot of indigo, I'm talking like 50 to 100 grams in a 5-gallon bucket. That's a lot of indigo. If there's a lot of indigo in there and you've only used it a couple times and you put it away for a year or two, and now you want to try to use it again, you definitely need to do the stir, settle exercise, probably at least 2 to 4 times. And then it should start to show you what color it's got left in it. If after, you've done this a couple of times and it just won't come back, you can try adding more reducing. You're going to have to look at that liquid. If the liquid is dark blue, then you need more reducing agent. If the liquid is just wimpy and kind of grayish and it looks actually clear and you can see it to the bottom of the spoon, and you've been stirring it and letting it settle and stirring it and letting it settle, it sounds like that is an exhausted vat.
Okay, my vat was it was full of indigo, but I think it might have been, I was trying to add more reducing agent and to change the pH, and I just don't think I stirred it enough.
Keep stirring it. It's probably fine. Yeah.
Thanks.
So there's a couple questions on this this seasoning and aging, Kathy.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna try to. So there's one about what. Just hear me out on this one. So what is it about the aging process that improves the color? And when you're aging it, do you keep it? Are you keeping it at 90 degrees for 3 days? Do you reheat it? So is the heat and the aging working together? And then another person saying, what do you think accounts for the darkening of color with the aged fat?
So kind of in natural dyes altogether, a little bit of time often will improve results. So in the case of mordantine, if you mordant something and you let it cure for 2 or 3 or 4 days, and then you do the dyeing, you get a darker color. Or dyers will leave things in a dye pot overnight in order for the color to strike longer. I think with the indigo vat, because this is a chemical reaction between, let's just say, fructose, water, indigo, and calcium hydroxide, all of those ingredients, there's an initial reaction that happens and it's good, it's strong, but you get even better results if you give it some time to really interact and really fully complete its reaction process. Because again, all that stuff is settling to the bottom, and the active ingredients, if you will, are stuck in that sediment, and maybe they're leaching out a little bit during this 72-hour, the 3-day aging process. I mean, we could have done it the next day and gotten the same results. We just don't know. It was just, I thought it would be slightly darker or maybe even a little bit more even, but we were a little shocked, pleasantly shocked at how much richer it was. So I think it's just giving the ingredients more time to kind of do their entire reaction so that you get the results.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to go back to a question that came in online. So this person says, I have an old indigo vat, several years old, from back in the day. When I used chemicals to reduce before I learned the 1, 2, 3, it still has lots of indigo in it. So my question is, can I salvage the indigo somehow or convert it to a 1, 2, 3 type vat somehow?
I think you can. I'm not totally sure. So what I would do is I would check the pH first and make sure your pH is, 10 or 11. And then I would stir it like crazy. It probably doesn't have much hydrosulfite left in it, or thiox, or whatever you were using, but it should not smell like sulfur. If it smells like sulfur, you're going to want to keep stirring it to get rid of as much of that smell as possible. And then I would add fructose. If your pH is good, you have lots of indigo in there, and it really just needs to be reduced, then I would add fructose. And you might need to kind of do this over the course of a bit of time because you may have residual chemistry from the diox vat that you were using that's in there. And I don't know what you used for your alkali, if you used lye or if you used soda ash or if you actually use calcium hydroxide. But that might also impact it a little bit. But again, try reducing it. You would heat it though. So I would check the pH, make sure your pH is good. If your pH isn't good, add some calcium hydroxide and get the pH up. And then stir it like crazy to make sure that it's all that residual thiox is out of there. At least it's no longer active. And then finally reduce it, heat it and reduce it.
Okay. Could you explain Shake-a-lotta again?
Yeah, hold on.
Oh, no. Kathy behind the curtain.
I have all these curtains. Okay, so go ahead and put it on this camera. So Shake-a-lotta is basically, what does it say? Oh, it says unmute. Yeah. Okay. Oops. Shake-a-lotta is just a combination of indigo, calcium hydroxide, and fructose all just mixed together rather than mixing each ingredient separately, dissolving it separately. So all of this would be mixed into together and then added into the vat. And this is again the method that Scrambles Quilts, Kristen Arts introduced to me. She said she got the information from Catherine Ellis and Joy Botroup from their class in Penland. And they got it from Michelle Garcia. So what we found is that it does, let me see if I can show you. There's a super slight difference in, so this is fructose and this is Shake-a-lotta, okay? As you can see, I think you can see.
It's kind of hard. I mean, you can see a little bit.
This is lighter than this. So this is a 3 1-minute dip. This is a 3 1-minute dip. And this is lighter than this one. And it's also slightly grayer. This one is lighter than this one. But then as we get to the aged vat, it looks like the Shake-a-lotta has really just incorporated and they're nearly identical. In fact, this 5-minute aged dip is darker than the fructose one. So it kind of starts a little slower, but it ends up in a dark shade in the same place or even better. So that was our observation. Okay.
My banana fructose vat works perfectly well, but has little to no flour. Why could this be?
You know, different vats will give different flowers. Like the henna vat and the indigo, the iron vat are just like these huge flowers come off of the vat. But the fructose vat can be pretty flat. And in fact, even not even have any flower at all and just kind of like a tiny sprinkling of bubbles. Don't worry about that. It's really, if your vat is performing well and you're getting great color, I would not worry about the flower.
All right. Okay. Hi, Eva. Is the 1-2-3 ratio the same for henna?
Yes, it's 1 part indigo, 2 parts calcium hydroxide, and 3 parts henna. The deal with henna is that it kind of expands a lot, so it's quite bulky and it's very goopy. And so if you just throw it into your vat, you're going to have this ball of henna at the bottom that is almost impossible to dissolve. So we actually dissolve it in a separate small bucket and we strain it, you know, with a wire strainer so that any of the fibers or any of that kind of henna goop is dissipated before we add it into the vat. And Kate, I'm pretty sure that we show that, right, in our illustrations of the information.
Yeah, we documented the straining of it. That was definitely the hardest ingredient to make sure that we had fully dissolved and incorporated of all 4 vats.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. So Debbie Ellis is asking, so are you heating the vat continuously or are you heating up after a period of sitting?
We heat it only when we're going to use it. So
Okay.
heat the vat, get it to, get it to 90 degrees and then remove the heater, stir the vat, let it settle, check it, right? Do a test and then start dipping. I don't keep it heated the entire time.
This is probably the most important question or statement. Heidi Iverson just wants you to know, Kathy, it's Nomad Botanicals replenishing oil, Mad Hippie for face cream and eye cream and lip stuff, and Mineral Fusion lip tint. So
Is Mad Hippie in Portland?
I don't know. Everybody else is going to kill us for that one. Thanks, Heidi. We'll go to that. Okay, can you please talk about ratios of water, fructose, and indigo into the vat?
Yes, we actually have this super detailed explanation of trying to figure out, like, if you want a light vat, if you want a medium vat, or if you want a dark vat, like how much indigo do you use and what size container? And so the way that we've broken it down is to have you do calculations based on the amount of indigo per the amount of water. And we characterize this as grams per liter. So grams of indigo per liter of water. For those of you who don't live in metric land, a liter of water is approximately a quart. It's a little bit more, but it's roughly a quart of water. So if all you have is quart measurements, you can use the quart as your measurement and you'll still be within the ballpark of what these vats produce. And the reason we're doing it this way is because when we were doing the spoonful method, which is what I first learned, I found out that some people, a spoonful for some people is like 3 grams of indigo and a spoonful for other people is like 20 grams. And so even though the measurements are consistent, that people were getting inconsistent results, or people were putting 3 grams of indigo into a 5-gallon bucket and getting nothing because there's not enough indigo in there. So we backed it down to how many liters could a 5-gallon container hold comfortably and how many grams of indigo. So we have these tables in the new instructions that say if you want a media, like these, all of our samples were done with 50 grams of indigo in a 5-gallon container. And so as you can see, we got some pretty dark shades, especially with iron, and the vats are still good. And that is, I think, 3 grams per liter of indigo. So was that correct, Kate? Were we at 3 or 2?
I'm double checking now because I can't remember.
Yeah, none of the 3.1, right? So we are at 3 grams. So it's kind of like a medium to dark vat. So
yeah, it was just over 3 grams per liter. Sorry to interrupt.
No problem. Thank you. So anyway, because you're using 3 grams per liter and you know how many liters you have, you can kind of calibrate how light or how dark your vat's going to be. So you can scale this up all the way to a 50-gallon barrel, or you can scale it down to a 1 quart kind of test vat if you wanted to. So there's lots of ways to do it. And we're just trying to give you the flexibility to be able to create the size of vat that works for you. Obviously, a 5-gallon vat is good for something that's about the size of a bandana, or if you're doing shibori, a small shibori piece, but you couldn't put much more volume size, I suppose, area size. You couldn't put a bed sheet in there. You couldn't even put a bath towel in there and get really good consistent color. So you are going to want to size your vat for the kind of work you do. If you're doing, large pieces of fabric, something like this, you're going to need a large vat, like at least 40 gallons. So like a 50-gallon barrel would be great. Of course, that's an investment in indigo and ingredients, but if that's what you're trying to do, you're trying to get one large piece dipped and you have a number of those, then that is something that you could use. And all of these buckets, barrels, containers, we're using standard 5-gallon buckets for our 5-gallon. There's also 7-gallon buckets that are available. And then once you move to like 10-gallon and above, there's a whole bunch of different kind of trash cans and fairly heavy duty containers that you can use that will hold a vat really nicely. I hope that answered your question.
Okay, can you please talk about ratios? Oh, sorry. Is there any water treatment required? Is there a difference between hard and soft water, water pH, etc.?
I haven't noticed a difference. And in Seattle, we have extremely soft water. It's non-mineralized because we've leached out, all of our water is glacial water. So it doesn't have like the limestone and magnesium that groundwater has. But I haven't noticed a huge difference between groundwater and our water, except that possibly groundwater has, because it has a slightly richer mineralization, might either, it could very well react better, right?
This is something I wonder about too. Nadine Allen is asking, what can I do about yellow-brown residue streaks that appear on indigo dyed from the 123 vat fabric after it's dried?
I don't think you're rinsing it enough.
Oh. Good Lord, are you? This is where the story begins that we're all witness to. So everybody remember what's happening. Kate, what do? Kathy's got to get the mailman's delivery so people get orders completed.
Oh, there we go.
My favorite FedEx person. They're so great. All right.
So just not rinsing enough for that yellow brown residue.
So, I mean, you can check if you've been modifying your vat a lot and like adding a lot of fructose or adding a lot of calcium. I definitely check your pH, right? And make sure you're not wildly off somewhere there. But if you're getting like this big fade and kind of yellowish streak, most of that is there's still stuff on the garment or the fabric that is still reacting. Mm-hmm. So you want to get that off.
Yeah, you can learn a lot about your fabric and the junk that's on it just by dyeing.
Yeah, if it's an over dye thing, we did a little, I know what I did. I had an over dye linen jacket and I let it somehow, did something with it with a henna vat. And all the henna went to the folds of the jacket and just showed themselves on the surface. So I had these big watercolor brown stripes all over everything. So, it may be that the henna is also kind of like expressing itself. I would then move to like a fructose vat or something that has less of a color story underneath so that it's not doing that on your fabric.
Mm-hmm. I think that's exactly what's happened to me, Kathy. When I did those brown spots, it was with a henna vat. Mm-hmm. Okay, when do you use vinegar in the washing process?
So what I'll do is I'll rinse off most of the blue, like the first 2 or 3 rinses are pretty laden with excess blue. And then once I'm kind of past that, I'll just draw a bucket of water, put in some vinegar. And I mean, it's a small amount. It's couple of tablespoons all the way up to maybe half a cup. I mean, it's not a ton. Stir it around. It's cold water. It's just regular water. And then I put the textile in there and I let it soak. And I'll just kind of, if it's cotton or something that won't felt, I'll agitate it pretty strongly in there just to kind of get the in there. And then I let it sit for anywhere from 20 minutes to a long time because I forget about it. Then I come back and I just finish rinsing it and hang it.
Okay. Christine Hegel. Hi, Christine. Can you run through the finishing processes? I have notes to soak in lye water after soap water. Not quite sure what this lye is.
So lye is a super strong alkali, and it's actually dangerous to handle. I mean, you need to have PPE in order to handle it because you don't want to breathe the powder from lye powder. And if you're using a lye liquid, you don't want to get splashed by it. It's highly corrosive. You need to wear eye protection, at least a mask, dust mask of some sort, and gloves. But lye water, I'm not sure why you would, possibly you could use a slightly alkali solution to soak your textiles in, but we've found that we have residual calcium, and it may be because we're using really short vats and there's a lot of calcium in them, and we keep stirring up the calcium, and so it embeds itself in the fabric. Maybe someone with a much taller, larger vat has less of a problem and they don't see that, but we use the vinegar, the slightly acidic liquid, in order to dissolve the last of that residual calcium. Otherwise, we get unevenness.
Okay, because in that recipe, or what I wrote down, that was actually first wash in soap water a few times, and then wash in lye water, soak in lye water for 1 hour, and then again in fresh water, and then vinegar also.
Yeah, I don't know what the lye step is for, Christine. Yeah.
You think soap is enough, and then
soap is
yeah.
alkaline as well. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because you're right. Thank you. Yeah.
Avoid the lye if you can.
Yeah, it sounds crazy. Yeah, I don't like it. Thank you.
Kathy, there are about 52 more messages that I'm looking at, and it's 101.
Okay.
What do you want to do? You want to answer one or two more?
Because there's a lot of questions that are probably have already, because we answer questions about indigo pretty much
I'm
around the
skipping
clock.
over some that I've definitely seen that you've answered, but you know, there's one I'm looking at
Also
here.
links to the earlier blog posts that we've done that probably
Yeah,
answer
so
many of those questions. So we can give you all those links so that you can peruse them yourself. The other thing is the other important thing is that the instructions on making a 1, 2, 3 vat with kind of our new methods is going to be online this weekend. So once we have that published and this video published, you will have all the information you need to try this yourself.
Kathy, I've been wanting to do this to show people, but I want to see if I can do this, like share the screen and just show our site, like how you can find things on our site about what we're talking about. Okay, all right.
Are you co-host?
We didn't practice this.
Okay.
Okay.
Even when I practice, it doesn't work.
Okay. So you guys, when you go on our site, you can go over here to the search and you'll see search products or search the blog. So of course you can search products, put in indigo. And when you put in indigo and hit return, you're going to see all kinds of stuff that's all indigo on our site. But if you hit this and you hit the blog and you look for indigo, then a lot of when we didn't do this live, when it was just blog posts, there's indigo facts, there's hints and tips, there's so much indigo help, like indigo roundup of indigo dyeing questions. There's so much indigo stuff here for you guys to look over. So really utilize the site. It's like a little library that you need to tap into, and then you can get lots of different answers to your questions. And we can have you answer some of the questions, Kathy, from the chat after.
Yes.
And I can add them in and make a new roundup of Feedback Friday questions too.
Okay, great. So let's go ahead and wrap this up because it is a little bit after the hour. just some reminders for you, and then I'll let you know who we have as our special guest next week. First of all, thank you, you guys. This was really helpful. Oh, the kids are here.
What's happening?
They have like a extracurricular art class in the facility. And so then there's like these hordes of children that come screaming through about every hour. It's great. We just posted a class with Sasha Durer, and we're really excited about this. It's going to be held in January. I think it's January 9th and 10th. Is that right? 9th and 10th?
Could
It's
be.
the weekend. And what Sasha's going to be doing is we'll be providing fabric and also 2 dyes, Himalayan rhubarb root, so not the extract, but the actual root, and then I think madder, those 2. And then Sasha's going to have you forage your holiday decorations. So pine cones, citrus peels, pomegranate peels, cedar boughs, any Douglas fir, anything that you have left over from holiday. She's going to show us how to get color from that. And we'll be using the concepts from her book, Natural Palettes, and creating 4 different colors from 1 dye. So this is going to be like super exciting. And we invite you to join us for that one. And what else? Oh, Cara Marie Piazza, good friend.
Kate.
She went away again.
Coming back. The small studio.
Come back, Kathy.
Cara Marie has this really beautiful new dye kit that she's selling on our site. So that's exciting. That's online. Amy says, any new dyes you'd like to promote? Yeah, we do have new dyes coming, but I don't have them ready, so I'm not going to promote anything. Let's just talk about our next week's guest, who is Tolly Weinberg. Tolly is this amazing artist who utilizes weaving, sculpture, thread drawing, and works on paper to visualize climate data. And so she did this set of weavings that showed like how over time temperatures have been rising. She did that one. She did one that was like paper weaving that was just really beautiful. So Tolly is going to be with us next week. She draws on the history of weaving as a subversive language for women and marginalized groups to create a feminist material archive in response to worsening climate crisis. Her works merge practices of record keeping with practices of grieving and merge expressions of scientific research with expressions of lived experience. Through sculpture, drawing, and textiles using natural dyes, she traces relationships between climate change, water, extractive industries, illness, and displacement. This is going to be really, really fascinating, and I'm looking forward to it. She's so incredible. The other thing I'm just going to give a quick plug for is that right now Fibershed has their annual wool symposium online, and I believe you can still buy tickets. It goes through tomorrow, and the sessions are being recorded, so you can purchase a ticket now and drop in and get recordings for the sessions that you miss. But the lineup has just been incredible. Yesterday they had a fireside talk with Dr. Elizabeth Johnson. So that was just amazing to hear a marine biologist speak about the need for both a Green New Deal or issues with land stewardship and climate, and the importance of also having oceans involved. Okay, I'm going to end it there. We can open it for hellos, goodbyes, etc. Amy, anything else?
So,
Have to hang in there, and a lot of times the money isn't there, so you gotta hang on.
All right. Well,
covered it all.
Those were the two little
Handy dandy checklist.
I had today.
checklist,
Pivots to where we are.
we're good. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.
Pivots is a great
Hi,
word.
Grease.
Thank you.
Bye.
Hey, Kathy.
Bye.
Thank
Thanks
you.
very
Bye.
much. Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye,
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.